When we think of science, a lot of times we think of those core subjects like chemistry, biology, or science. And maybe you're embracing the Charlotte Mason method and you've thought of nature study and included that in your science curriculum. But what about biographies? Today, I want to share with you one of the pivotal things that we add to our science studies every year that has made a magnificent difference in our homeschool. Hello and welcome back to Wholehearted Homemaking. My name is Heather, and here I share all things related to homeschool, motherhood, and homemaking. Today I want to share with you some of our favorite science biographies and how we use them in our homeschool. Now, a few years ago, we were using Amblesite Online pretty heavily. We were mixing a few. And there, around year 4, they introduced some biographies of different scientists. And at the time, my daughter was feeling like everything was very boy heavy, my oldest. And so I was looking for how can I introduce some stories and books about women. And science was just the right way to do that. And so I started by getting her this book called Finding Wonders. And in it, it talks about 3 different women scientists. Let me make sure I say their names right. Maria Sibylla Marian, Mary Anning, and Maria Mitchell. And so my daughter read this and she was hooked. She loved reading the stories of the scientists. So after that, I followed it up with girls who looked under rocks, and that is again a chapter book. These are easy ones, but again it has Maria Sibylla Marian, Anna Botsford Comstock, Frances Hammerstrom, Rachel Carson, Miriam Rothschild, and Jane Goodall. So it talked about all these different female scientists, and it was something that just made her day. So I figured out why not add it to my other kids. And so we started adding some picture book science biographies. And Joan Proctor Dragon Doctor, again, was for my oldest because she loved reptiles, specifically snakes. And Joan Proctor Dragon Doctor works with Komodo dragons. And so that was a very apropos. There are so many other great picture book science biographies, and I'll share some in my blog post that's linked below. But just so you know, these are some of our favorite books. We get a lot from the library because we could not own all of them, but I'll show you a few of our favorites. We have Joan Proctor, Dragon Doctor, Small Wonders, which is about Jean-Henri Fabre and his World of Insects, and that was really good, especially if you're going to read some of his other books. And Summer Birds by Maria Sibylla Marian. Other books we liked were Dinosaur Lady, Shark Lady, and I think there's one about a tree lady maybe. And there are many, many others, and I will share all those in the blog that we have loved or are looking forward to. But introducing those picture book scientist biographies and having my older child read the science biographies made me think, well, if it is benefiting her and it is piquing her interest not only into the person's life and the culture of that time, but also into the science subject, then I want that for all of my kids. And so we started incorporating a science biography for every part of the school year. And for my older kids, it now aligns with whatever their science study is, which I'll share on in a minute. But in general, I have one at every level for my kids. So here are some examples. Last year we did space, and so my youngest read this from ICR, Institute for Creation Research, about Johannes Kepler. And it was a great 3rd grade read because it has a lot of pictures, and yet it's still fairly big font, but it is reading, and gave a little background. And then my next older read Johannes Kepler from Sober Series, and that was a great fit. And then my oldest had one that we got from the library that she read about him. And so you can kind of see that I try to find a biography about the same person for all my children, but at their individual levels. Another example would be later this year, we're going to be doing George Washington Carver. And so we have the story of George Washington Carver, which is going to be perfect for my 4th grader. We also have this Dell Young one, which would also be a good 4th grade one because it does have some pictures, rather large font. It's a good early reader. And then we have the Sower series, which my middle kids will, and my oldest will have another version that is on my shelf. And so you can kind of see that we try to just find ones that are for their level. This is more of a picture book version, and I will list all of these on the blog as well as some others that we get from the library because we do lean heavily on the library for this. Some other great ones is The Girl Who Drew Butterflies, and this is just this is a great adult Biography if you want to read more about her and her work with insects and nature in general, and it just has some beautiful prints in it. My oldest read this one because she wanted to know more about Maria Sibylla Merian, even though she hates bugs. She enjoyed reading about that. And so it has just been a blessing to be able to find things that interest my children. And you can see I have a lot of the same series because a lot of these companies and publishers will start a series about biographies or about scientists. And so that's really where I find of it. If we find one that we like this is the Science Stories series. And it has a lot of pictures. That's what you can see I put notes for my daughter. So go narrate to mama, since it doesn't have chapters. That way she knew where to stop. And time to narrate and things like that. So that way she knew where to stop. But those are great kind of picture book before chapter books, a little bit longer. And so there's a lot of great options. So I wanted to give you a quick example for how this is going to work in our home. So for term 1, my middle children are studying waves and sound. So they're doing kind of a physics study. And there's a lot of great physics out there. So physicians, yes, that we could learn about. But we're going to do Isaac Newton. We really haven't studied Isaac Newton yet, which really we should. So we will be doing Isaac Newton. I don't have the picture book because we will be getting it from the library, but it is called Newton's Rainbow. I'll try to put a picture up here somewhere. And that will be for my grade 1 child. And my preschoolers and probably my grown older kids will read it as well because we all love picture books. And so we will do that picture book. Then moving on, I have a 4th grader who will be reading the Sower series, which is by John Hudson Tyner. If you have not read his books, he has lots of different history and science books that are just phenomenal. I believe History of Medicine is one of his that is just really great, and my daughter reads it for fun now, even after school time is over. And so he is just a great author. And so we will be reading, my 4th grader will be reading this. Then my 6th and 7th grader will be sharing The Ocean of Truth. Now, if you've done Ambleside Online, they recommend this for grade 4. The reason I'm doing it is because I don't want to skip it, but also, but it is a little bit harder print, and I feel like they have such a heavy load that that'll be fine for them. Other curriculums have Ocean of Truth in the middle school years. It really just kind of depends on your individual child. But this will be a perfect fit for my 6th and 7th graders based on the reviews I've read and just the little snippets I've read to gauge their reading ability. And then my high schooler, she will be in 9th grade, and she is an avid reader. She's just a bookworm. She will be reading Isaac Newton by Harry Sutton. These books are out of print, and I just cannot justify paying for them. I've tried several times to find them cheaper. So we will be borrowing it from the library, and this is actually really well written. I started reading it as a free read, and I am intending to continue, but it was so interesting that I was hooked. I was like, is this a science book? What is this? This is a living book, you guys. This is so exciting, and it was so fun to read. Just the first part. I can't wait to finish reading it, and I know that my 9th grader will love it as well. But you can see how across the board we now have different levels of reading about the same person, and yet those will, well, we don't have like, let's come together and all talk about Isaac Newton. They haven't come across in their conversation. I've heard them several times, whether it's their history, because we do the same thing with our history biographies, whether it's the history or the science biographies, they have this connection. So while we didn't read it aloud together, they all have a common friend in history. And so it'll come out and they'll say, oh, well, that wasn't in my story, or yeah, I read that in my book. And all these different conversations just help them to build connections to relate to history and to the scientists. And like I said, often when we read about the scientists, it gets them more interested in the science subjects. And so for my children, science biographies have been a great gateway and encouragement or motivator to get into those science subjects and know more and learn more about it. And so I really encourage you to check out some various scientist biographies, and if you need some help, I will be putting a lengthy list right there on the blog for you, and that'll be down below, and I hope that that is a help. If you have any questions, suggestions, we would love to learn about new scientists and biographies that are great, well written. please drop that in the comments as well, or visit me on the blog and leave a comment there. So I hope that this has encouraged you to go pick up some biographies about your favorite scientists, or maybe an unknown scientist to you, and enjoy reading together. Thank you so much for watching. Have a blessed day, and let us go forth and strive to serve the Lord and our families wholeheartedly.